Hello everyone and welcome back to Perth South Model Railway, and may I wish you all good health during the current COVID-19 crisis. This March 2020 update is mainly about the track laying and wiring through the station area. It isn't going to be a blow-to-blow account of or how-to video, but more of an overview of how I've gone about things and some useful things I've learned as I've progressed the track and wiring. For those more recent viewers who haven't seen previous videos in the overall track plan, the station layout is based in the south end of Perth station after the re-signalling of 1962, and indeed it's still largely the same track and signalling that exists at Perth today. It's Perth South because it represents the south end of the station. On the layout, the north end lies beyond the scenic break, and this is the point where the tracks curve round the end of the layout. The plans were prepared on any rail and transferred to the baseboard surface by printing out A1 sheets of the plan at full size. As I lay the various track bed components, the DCC Concepts track bed and power base, I immediately reinstate the track centre line so I always have an exact planned position of where the track is to go. It also helps ensure a correct straight alignment on the straight track. The DCC Concepts track bed is good in that it comes in a flat form rather than a roll, so it isn't always trying to roll itself up again as you lay it. The manufacturer recommends weighing down the foam after you lay it, but I've found it sits where you place it pretty well. On curves you can split it down the middle, and I've cut slots in each piece on sharper curves so that it stays in place in the curve. When laying these power base plates, remember that your locomotive is still hauling a train up the incline even when it reaches the top. So you have to lay the power base plates well beyond the top of the incline. This point here represents the top of the incline, which is coming from the right hand direction, and you can see that I've continued to lay the power plates for about 2/3 of the length of a train stopping a bit here. To ensure good electrical distribution, I've tried to ensure a feed wire is connected to every section of rail. Now, where you have the power base plates, you have to be careful passing these down through the holes to make sure that you don't get any shorts across the power base plates. And generally, when I install them, I try and put the two separate rail wires through separate power base plates. So in this case, I would put a black wire down through there and a red wire through there. Either that or I'd position the hole so that it goes down between the power base plates. One of the disadvantages of a track plan with hidden tracks is dealing with any future problems on hidden stretches of track. I have a reverse loop under the station junction area, and so I decided to make the baseboard tops removable. Rather than just use wood screws to hold the plywood top to its frame, I've used these Type D wood screw inserts, often used in flat pack furniture. These screw into the baseboard frame, giving a permanent metal insert to hold the bolt passing through the baseboard top. They're relatively easy to install, but you have to ensure they go in as straight as possible. When you're building a large layout single-handed, it's important to look for shortcuts and ways of increasing your productivity. The following are just a few ways I've found of doing this. I guess you would call it the economy of mass production, but it's always more efficient to do one type of task many times rather than jump from task to task. For instance, preparing point motors. I use these tortoise machines and have pre-soldered connections and wired them to terminal strips.
As you can see here, I prepare a whole batch of these at once. However, even this is broken down to several mass production stages. The process starts with cutting and trimming the wire. Cut lots of wire at once with the scissors continually in your hand. When it comes to tinning the wires, hold the soldering iron in a small vise so you free your hands to hold the wire in one hand and the solder in the other. It's much quicker this way. In this case, I'm preparing a batch of dropper wires. For fixing wires into the terminal strip, I use this jig of wood with nails through it to hold the terminal strip. I can then use the power screwdriver to tighten up the screws. Similarly, preparing points for best DCC results involves breaking the links in the underside and fixing wires to the switch and stop rails and also the frog. It's better to do a dozen or so at once to get the best use of your time. I've got some 30 points in this part of the layout, 115 total points in the layout, and I tend to fit the point motors first once I've checked the point positions and marked them up for location and drilled the holes for droppers, and particularly the tie bar. I fix the points in position, making sure they're lined up with my centre line marking and with any adjacent points. Finally, I lay in the plain line connecting the points, again ensuring the straight sections follow the centre lines. I don't use track setters and prefer to use steel rules for straightness. As I'm using occupancy detection in the layout, every separate section goes to a different termination point linked to the BDL 168 detectors. I mark out all the detection section names, numbers and physical limits. That's the point where the insulated joints are required. Again, using an automatic control system like Train Controller, you need to check lengths of blocks and lengths and sections of stop sections to ensure your longest planned train can stop within the block and without fouling any adjacent tracks.
So in this section here, we're into detection section 26/6. That's BDL board number 26 and number 6 out of the 16 detection sections on that BDL. And this continues right round this plain section of track until we get to here, and then we enter the stop section, which is section 26/9. And these sections I generally make between 8 inches and 1 foot, or 200 to 300 mil, and that gives plenty of time for the locomotives to enter the stop section and stop before they reach the fouling point, which is here, where it could collide with another train using this crossover.
On this particular board there are 18 different detection sections with 24 sets of points. This is a lot of wiring to connect up. Because of this complexity of wires, it's important to mark every wire with its destination. This helps avoid mistakes and ensures that the final testing will be trouble-free. Another thing I have adopted to help ensure the frog wiring is connected right first time, and also to help ensure the normal and reverse settings are as you would wish them to be, is to code each set of points with a 3-digit code, as you see here. In this case, these are points number 36 and the code is NBL. The first letter indicates if the turnout is facing north or south in the layout plan. The second tells whether the turnout motor is positioned facing the switchblades or at the back of the switchblades. And the third letter indicates if it's a left-hand or right-hand turnout. Note it could be a left-hand turnout with the main line on the turnout road, and in this case you would treat it if you wished as a right-hand turnout and vice versa. This results in a 3-letter code for each turnout, and from this and my master diagram you get the turnout, power and frog wiring correct every time without trial and error. Now this I admit, rather complex diagram is specific to tortoise point motors and tells me which terminals in the motor to attach the point motor feed and return, and also the track feed and return for the 8 various combinations of whether it's north or south, whether the point motor's back or front, and whether it's a left-hand or right-hand turnout. You could create a diagram like this for any other type of point motor, at least one which has inbuilt switches. This is the completed wiring in board 8. I wouldn't say I'm the tidiest wirer in the world, but it's certainly a lot better than what it was at the beginning, and it all tested absolutely 100% once it was put in place. Finally, testing it all. I test the points first, making sure they all work correctly, both using the handheld controller and the computer with train controller, and then check that all the detection sections work as planned by monitoring section occupation and train controller as a train travels through the section, as you see here. I have a few more locomotives have appeared in the layout now that I've fitted sound decoders to them. First, a Helgen class 27, number D5347. This was an Eastfield based loco for most of the 1960s. I fitted it with a Zemo MX645R decoder with a Rails exclusive 26x20x8 baby boomer speaker. The sound is by Paul Chetter from Digitrains, and it's pretty amazing. I've also got 2 Dapol Class 21 North British diesels. These famously were disastrously unreliable and perhaps helped justify bringing the A4 steam locomotives back to this route in the early 1960s. And that's a lot of what this layout's about. It's about recreating Perth and the Scottish Central Main Line in that period from 1962 to 66, when the A4s were busy hauling the Glasgow-Aberdeen expresses. These North British locos are fitted with Locksound 5 decoders and Rails exclusive speakers, in this case 40x20x10 boombox speakers. The sound is from Digitrains, and my thanks go to Jeremy at Digitrains for all the advice on these decoders and speaker purchases and installations. That's really all there is to report this month. Next time it will be on to the boards, taking the various tracks round to the south end of the station and onwards towards the loco depot. In the meantime, I'll finish with some more operational shots of this latest section of the layouts. Many thanks for watching, and hope to see you next time, and of course, please stay safe during this most difficult time.